Hello, everybody. I'm glad you're here today. I'm going to tell you a little story about myself, and will give you a little insight into who I am. I sometimes imagine that I'm talking to people that are actually in the Bible, the people that are mentioned in the Bible. Like, what would I say to them? And I know sometimes we think, well, when I get to heaven, I want to talk to Moses, or I want to talk to David, or John the Baptist, or whoever. And we have these conversations we want to take place with these great giants of faith. And so I had that moment the other morning. If I were to talk to the Apostle Paul, what would we visit about? And, I thought he would probably tell me, you have the internet? And I would say, yes. And he would say, why aren't you proclaiming Christ on the internet? That feels very easy to me based on what I had to do when I was on this earth, where I had to go by foot to all these places, get beaten up, thrown in jail, nearly killed. And you have the internet and you're not using it to share Jesus with people? Man, that's a no-brainer, girl. That's kind of how the conversation ended. Me and Paul talking face to face. So I got to thinking, all right, well, Paul, what would you say if you had a YouTube channel? And he would say start with the basics. Believe in Jesus Christ as the Son of God. So that's what I'm doing today. We're going to go to Rome. Okay, I know there's so many passages, but we're going to go to Romans 10, verse 8. But we're going to start kind of in the middle of verse 8. And we're just going to read it. It's the very basic belief in Jesus Christ. Now, there is a difference to just verbally affirming your belief in Jesus. These aren't magic words. This is not an incantation, however you say that. It's not a little thing you just say and suddenly you're saved. You've got to believe this with every cell of your body. And Paul addresses that in this passage. So here we go. We'll just start with Romans 10, the middle of verse 8, talking about the message and the good news of Jesus Christ. And that message is the very message about faith that we preach. If you openly declare that Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. For it is by believing in your heart that you are made right with God, and it is by openly declaring your faith that you are saved. That means that it's not just verbiage saying what's it called? The sinner's prayer. I mean, I've never been exposed to that very much. That was not something I grew up with in my church that I was exposed to. It was always stressed very much that you had to believe in your heart, and then your life had to look like Christ as you grew in him. So I think that's what Paul is saying here. For it is by believing in your heart that you are made right with God, and it is by openly declaring your faith that you are saved. As the scriptures tell us, anyone who trusts in him will never be disgraced. Jew and Gentile are the same in this respect. They have the same Lord who gives generously to all who call on him. For everyone who calls on the name of the Lord will be saved. But how can they call on him to be saved unless they believe in him? And how can they believe in him if they have never heard about him? And how can they hear about him unless someone tells them? And how will anyone go and tell them without being sent? That is why the scriptures say, how beautiful are the feet of messengers who bring good news. So that's what I want to leave you with today. We are all messengers. If you believe that Jesus is the Son of God and are like all in for him, you've committed your life to him, then your feet are beautiful. Then your feet are beautiful in some way, shape, or form, because we all have our way of bringing Christ to people. Some of us preach, some of us teach, some of us serve, some of us prophesy, some of us encourage. So there's all kinds of ways to be the feet of the messenger, all right? If you show people the love of Jesus Christ, you are proclaiming him. eventually that usually leads to, let me tell you about how you can be saved. Usually conversations of believers and it eventually come around to that belief in Jesus. It may not be the first moment you're with someone. It may be later on. It may be years after you first encounter someone and build a relationship with someone. As long as you continually show them Jesus by the way you live, verbally you're going to eventually come around to sharing how they can be saved. And here is how you can be saved. You need to find out who this Jesus is. You need to understand what your sin is doing. It is separating you from God. God is the creator of all things. What he says goes. I am the creator. You are the no. I am the created. You are the created. He is the creator. So what he says goes. I don't get a say. All right. And once I realize what my sin is doing to me, it's separating me from the Creator God. It is condemning me to a life in hell, which is real and will be horrific. You're not going to party down there with your friends. All right. You're going to be in darkness and pain and torture eternally. And if you decide to not follow God and not believe in Jesus Christ as his son, then that is your fate. And the moment you're dead, you don't get to change your mind. Okay, so I've said that before on here, saying it again. But there is hope. And the Lord planned this from before the beginning of time, Jesus. And Jesus makes us right with God. In fact, y'all, here, I know it's kind of getting late on this video, but let's go on back a little bit in chapter 10, Romans chapter 10. Verse 3, for we don't understand God's way of making people right with himself. Refusing to accept God's ways, they cling to their own way of getting right with God by trying to keep the law. Now, that's people who are kind of really rule-oriented, thinking they can earn their way, be good. If I act good, I am going to be right with God. That's a lie, okay? Because if you go on in verse 4, it says, for Christ has already accomplished the purpose for which the law was given. As a result, all who believe in him are made right with God. It's through faith, y'all. It's through faith and belief. All right, I'm going to leave that with you. Do with it as you need to. Stay safe, America. This is Gina Lima Charlie. I'm out.